I've been asked to talk about foods that cause inflammation and pain. So this will be very different for everybody out there because we all have different food sensitivities or allergies. You know, there are the common foods such as corn and soya, eggs, dairy, wheat or gluten, shellfish. So these are the common foods that are out there. But in order to understand what is causing inflammation, I'd like to give you a little bit of a story. So I've always eaten really well, and I was heading into my 50s and starting to gain weight, backache, hip pain, you know, sore throats, all sorts of things were starting to happen. And over an 18-month period, I'm thinking I've got to do something. So I eliminated everything from the diet except a small amount of meat, some green vegetables, and a few pieces of fruit. And in 3 weeks, I lost 9 kilos in weight. I lost all my back pain, my hip pain, clarity of mind like there was no tomorrow. And then I knew I couldn't just eat those foods, so I had to introduce the foods back into the diet. So I slowly introduced the foods, and at about day 10 after that 3-week period, I introduced bread back into the diet, which is basically wheat. And when I did that, overnight, I gained 900 grams, which is nearly a kilo. I also had my sore back come back, my hip pain, everything came back. So I knew that there was something in that bread that was causing the problem, and I thought, well, it's got to be wheat. And that's why I did the documentary, What's with Wheat? Because I had no problems as far as I could see with wheat until I hit my 50s. There are many reasons why we are less and less tolerant to food, but I think the most important reason we are intolerant to food is that we have lost the ability to digest our food and use our food. And that is because the microbiome is slowly being eroded. I recommend that if you do have a lot of issues with food that give you pain, then the best thing is to do an elimination. And you can do the fat loss protocol that's on my website, changinghabits.com.au, and be coached through that program and then reintroduce the foods back into the diet to figure out, you know, what is going to be good for you as an individual. We do it really simply. We don't do tests or anything like that. If we can't help you in that period of time, then we will suggest you go and get tests, figure out your IgA, your IgG, or your IgE inflammatory responses or immunoglobulin responses. So once we've figured that out, then you know the foods you're meant to be choosing. But if I was to, you know, say to you, without doing the protocol, what I feel is best for you and best for the human body and best for health, it would be real foods. No ultra-processed foods, but real foods. Real foods being fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, eggs, legumes, grains, meats, fish, chicken, herbs, spices, eggs, did I say that? Dairy, but in the best of quality that they can possibly be in. So we have adapted as humans to every single one of those foods. We've had no issues with them because when they were the only foods that were available, let's say it was meat and vegetables, then we adapted to that. If it was only rice and legumes and some vegetables, then we adapted to that. Or we adapted to a meat and dairy diet, or we adapted to a 95% carbohydrate diet. So it's not so much about how much fat, protein, or carbohydrates I should be eating, but it's about the quality of the food that you're consuming. Sometimes we need to eliminate foods to then reintroduce them back into the diet. We need to seal the gut, improve the microbiome, and then you will have less inflammatory and less pain responses to the food that you're consuming. So to tie it up in a nutshell, I recommend you go to changinghabits.com.au, have a look at our fat loss protocol. It might be right for you. It was the perfect thing for me, and that's why I've introduced it to the Changing Habits community. It was revolutionary for me, and I've seen it revolutionary for many people. You know, I'm 60 this year, and in that whole nearly a decade, I have not touched wheat, because I know that it's not good for me. I know the agricultural practices. It's probably the only food that I have an issue with. But guess what? Wheat is in just about everything. So when you go on this journey, it's quite incredible that the foods that you do start to feel good with are the foods that are single ingredient in your pantry and fridge, and then you can make 1,000 different recipes in order to not only feed and nourish yourself, but feed and nourish your family. And if you want your community, bring them along for the ride. Thanks for listening.